everyone, it's Hailey, and today I'm going to be talking about the books that I read in December. So this is a quite delayed December wrap-up. So most of these books I talked about in reading vlogs over the course of Bookmas. There are quite a few actually that didn't end up making it into a reading vlog because I was supposed to do a reading vlog on the one Monday, but circumstances just led to that not actually happening. But I did still want to share my thoughts on all of those books for you guys. So I have three like non-festive books here, and then the rest of the books are kind of festive, but I hope that you don't mind that I'm still going to talk about them because I feel like, I don't know, you can kind of read Christmassy or festive reads any time of year if you really wanted to. That being said, I'm not going to be sharing any spoilers for any of these books, so don't worry if you haven't read any of them, and I will also have timestamps in the description box down below, so if there is a specific book that you would like to hear about, then you can check that out. So the reading vlog that I didn't end up doing, I actually ended up reading a ton of books for it, which is so tragic. Like, I read this one and then plus I read an ebook as well, but that was supposed to be my Christmas romances reading vlog. It didn't end up happening for various reasons. However, of course it ended up being a reading vlog where like I read so much. But I'm actually going to start off with the book that I actually finished in November, but I didn't get the chance to include this in a recent reads video. So that is A Holly Jolly Diwali by Sonya Lalli. That is always kind of a struggle for me to say. But this is a book that is set during Diwali, and it follows a character who goes to India. She goes and she is learning more about her culture, what Diwali is, and it's just this like completely impulsive, out of character move for her, but she has just lost her job, so she decides to go and try, and like she's attending her best friend's wedding and she's kind of putting herself out of her shell. But along the way she ends up meeting a London musician who she can't help but fall for. So it is definitely a romance story, but it also is a book that's very much about the main character's like own personal development and her learning more about who she is, her family, her culture, like what she wants to do with her life and everything. So it was a really multifaceted story. I did enjoy the Diwali element to it, how it taught me a lot about that. The setting of India was beautiful. I felt like it truly transported me there, and I just loved watching her experience it for the first time. She's kind of struggling with her identity a little bit, and she basically has always wanted to be like the good Indian daughter, but she feels like she wants more than that now. So well, her older sister has always been the rebel and everything, and she felt like she's had to make up for that. She's breaking out of her shell and learning more about what she actually wants. The romance in here was also absolutely adorable. I loved the two of them and I felt like they were perfectly matched, and I just loved everything about this book. It was a really fun read to kind of kick off the holiday season for me, and I was very pleasantly surprised by it. So for the first reading vlog of Bookmas, I read a couple of my 5-star predictions that I had predicted. It's always so hard for me to explain this, but in 2020 I predicted some books that I felt like I was really going to love in 2021, and I read a lot of them, but there were also a few that I didn't get to, and I ended up reading 2 of those during Bookmas. So the first one is An Emotion of Great Delight by Tahereh Mafi. This is a contemporary, and it's following the main character in a really hard time in her life. It's when America has officially declared war on Iraq. It's 2003, and the main character is a Muslim character who just everything in her life has been going wrong. She's really struggling with, her mother is having a hard time. Her brother died a year ago and her family has been falling apart ever since then, and her father is very ill and she fears that she will lose him soon too. And she also had this best friend that she was like inseparable with, but now they have completely fallen apart. So essentially she is just experiencing a lot of changes and not for the better. She's seeing all this prejudice around her, and the news is always just very depressing, and she's having a very hard time in general. So as you would expect, it is a very emotional story, but I'm kind of torn on this one because the ending, that's really like the only thing I can remember is the ending, because it was so incredibly, unbelievably abrupt. It literally seems like it ends like mid-sentence. There's not that much that happens throughout the book. It's a very, very quiet plot where you're just following the character and like her relationships, how her life is going, all of that. So it's really about her story, and it's an internal story, but at the same time, then when like something does finally kind of start happening, the book ends. So there's so much that's left unresolved. I'm not really, like, I don't hate open-ended endings, but this for me was a little bit too much. It just was so incredibly, like, I was flipping through and I was like, did my book misprint or something? Because it just, out of nowhere, you get no answers. There's a bunch of questions that are brought up throughout the book, but you don't get any answers at all. There also are numerous triggers for this book, so definitely be wary of that and look into that before reading it. But I just felt like for such a depressing story that was really emotional, I didn't like the fact that you didn't get answers and you didn't know like what happened to certain characters that were really struggling, what happened to the main character, like let alone other characters. You didn't even really get to know what happened to her. So I just kind of had mixed feelings on this one. It was an incredibly fast read, but I felt like some of its impactfulness was impeded by the fact that it just like had such an abrupt ending. Next is The Cost of Knowing by Brittany Morris. So this is by the author of Slay, and I definitely thought that I was going to love this one because I enjoyed Slay so much. And I didn't not like this one. However, I didn't enjoy it quite as much as Slay. So I don't think either of these were accurate 5-star predictions, but oh well, like they weren't bad books. I just kind of have some issues with both of them. So in this one, you're following the main character and his brother. And I will say I did enjoy this one a lot. It's just I kind of enjoyed Slay a little bit more. But the main character, ever since his family, like he lost his parents, he has always had the ability to, when he touches something, then he sees the future of it. So it's really hard, obviously, going through life with that ability. But then he ends up touching something and sees his brother's imminent death. And obviously that is like really jarring, and he knows he can't really do anything with the information, and him and his brother have really been struggling since they lost their parents. So it's kind of about him trying to make up for lost time while also trying to save his brother, even though he knows he really can't. So it's a very emotional story. I felt like the kind of magical element to it, that's where I kind of had a disconnect with it. I loved watching these two brothers connect after so long apart, and their relationship was truly very nice to read about. But the magical element that was added, even though it was explained, I felt like I didn't quite get it, and it seemed a little bit out of place. I know it is like the catalyst for the whole story, but I don't know, I kind of had mixed feelings about that. However, I think Brittany Morris is a fantastic writer, and this book was no exception. Like, it totally broke my heart, and I don't know why, like, to start off December, I was like, let's read 2 really sad books, but that is what I ended up doing. But I did end up really liking this one, even though I did have a couple issues. The next reading vlog that I did, I had my boyfriend wrap up some books for me. So he wrapped them up, and then as I was unwrapping, that's what I chose to read. One of the books that I unwrapped was The War Outside by Monica Hesse, and I didn't get the chance to get to that one during Bookmas, but I did read it in January, so I will be talking about that in a video I'm actually filming right after this one, but I'm going to be talking about the books that I've read so far in January. However, one of the books that I did unwrap and read during that vlog was Blame It on the Mistletoe by Beth Garrod. I asked him to wrap up a couple of, actually that reminds me, I'm totally missing one. I'll need to find that one, but there's definitely 2 Christmas reads that I read during that vlog. So Blame It on the Mistletoe is the first one. I asked him to wrap up a couple Christmas reads for me, and then just some like random not too long books. And I didn't actually end up finishing this one, and I'm so sad because I thought it sounded adorable. It's a holiday retelling, and it's about this influencer who's hoping to like kickstart her account because it's kind of been struggling. So she decides to switch places for the days leading up to the holidays with one of her British followers. And I had so much trouble with the writing for this one. I know, like, I'm 26, so like YA isn't necessarily geared toward me, although anyone can read it, but this one just felt young to me. It felt really young, and I think just corny. It felt like I could tell an adult was trying to get into the headspace of like influencers and that whole thing, and I did not like the influencer element to it. It just felt so forced and so strange. And maybe it's just like I haven't seen that side of that world, so it just was weird to me. But on top of that, the voice of the British character, I can't remember her name, Holly, she was, I don't know, I didn't really care for her that much, and a lot of it was because the writing was just like non-stop. Like, I get that she was a very like peppy and energetic character, but the writing of her portions just felt like it was like I don't even know how to really describe it. It just was so jarring and hard to keep up with what was going on because she had such a distinctive voice. So I think that this one would definitely work for a lot of people. It just didn't work for me. I got like maybe halfway through, maybe a little bit more, and I was just like, yeah, I'm not liking this one. It kind of feels like I'm forcing myself to pick it up, so I ended up putting it down. But I did give it a go. So the other book that I forgot about, and I don't actually know where I put it, so I don't know, it's somewhere, but that is 8 Perfect Hours by Leah Louise. This actually was kind of disappointing to me because I was expecting it to be more Christmassy than it was, but it wasn't. So the cover kind of got me for this one, but it's set like during a blizzard. These two characters, there's so much snow that there's kind of not a pile up, but all of the cars are stopped on this highway in the UK, and she's on her way to go to a high school reunion, and she's actually going to get like a camera that her best friend who died recently, she put in this time capsule. So it's this whole thing, but they end up getting stranded in the snow in their cars together over the course of 8 hours. And then it's kind of them like meeting up again over the course of months. So it's not really all that Christmassy, but it definitely is like wintry. So you can read this book whenever. And I did like it. I just kind of, it felt like a really average, like I have such a hard time describing books that are just average to me because there wasn't anything that I can really pinpoint being wrong with the story. I just think I was expecting it to be something different, which is why it didn't necessarily work out all that well for me. So it was kind of like will they, won't they sort of thing, and I felt like there was mediocre chemistry between the two characters, so it was just fine. And the final book that I read for that reading vlog where my boyfriend wrapped some books was The Project by Courtney Summers. This I had been kind of like dreading reading because I really enjoyed Sadie by Courtney Summers, and this book came out last year. It's her most recent release, and the reviews that I had seen weren't all that great, and I tried to like avoid them and not let them cloud my judgment, and I didn't. I went into this with an open mind, but I was definitely a little bit nervous, a little bit skeptical, and at the beginning, I was like, okay, but then by the end, I was like, wow, there are a lot of things happening. The character does a complete 360 and is like a completely different person. Like, it's one thing for character development, but this wasn't character development. One, it was more of a decline, and two, it just didn't really make sense to me. This book deals with cults, and the main character, her sister, she joined a cult while she was in a coma, so this is gonna get confusing. I need to say their names. So Lo and B. B is the one who ended up joining a cult while Lo was in a coma from being in a car accident that took their parents. So she like takes solace in this cult and everything, and that's where she ends up going. And Lo is convinced that it's a cult because obviously like they don't say like this is a cult, but she's convinced this is a really bad place, bad things happen there and everything, so she sets out to investigate it. And she hasn't spoken to her sister at all, like they haven't spoken at all, and so she doesn't really know like for sure things about it, but she's just very skeptical, and she ends up being able to get an inside view at things, but like she just becomes a completely different character, and it was so frustrating. I kind of get why it happened. It just didn't seem realistic to me. It just made her seem really dumb. So I don't know if this is just a me issue, but I really did not care for that. I didn't care for where the story ended up going, but yeah, I don't know. It was just like meh. The final reading vlog that I did for Bookmas, and I filmed half of it, but then I ended up getting some bad news and I could not bring myself to film the rest of it. But for that, I read my Christmas holiday romances. And the first one that I read was just a short novella novella, and it's by Talia Hibbert. It's Wrapped in You, and this was really cute. Like, it's very short, so I don't really have that much to say about it, but it like kind of satisfied that, you know, holiday cuteness itch, and I did like it. It was a fun story. I felt the chemistry between the characters. It was just a really cute holiday romance. Not much else to say about it. However, I did try out one other novella, and that was Window Shopping by Tessa Bailey, and I ended up DNFing this one because it was literally just like sex with some mistletoe. That was it. Like, it was just like festive, like just constant weird, like, I don't know. This was just way too smutty for me, and nothing wrong with anyone who enjoys this. It just felt like it was smut just wrapped in like a pretty Christmas packaging, and that's not what I was wanting from it. I listened to the audiobook for this actually, and I think part of it was I hated the narrator, so that just made it like that much worse for me. But I just thought it was gonna be something so different. Like, it's about this girl who starts working at this department store dressing up their windows, and I was like, oh my god, adorable, like during Christmas doing window dressing, whatever. But it just ended up being like a really weird relationship developing and a really strange dynamic, and I just wasn't a fan of that. I don't know if you can hear it because sometimes the mic picks it up, sometimes it doesn't, but Charlie's chewing on his bone, so I apologize if you can hear it, but I'm just gonna let him do his thing. I did read 3 other books during that reading vlog week, and they were all Christmas books, and those were the last books that I ended up reading in December, because then I ended up going home for the holidays and I wasn't really reading then. So The Matzah Ball by Jean Meltzer is the other, well, the first like full-length book that I ended up finishing during that week, and I did really enjoy this one. It's an enemies to lovers story, and it's about an author who secretly she has been writing Christmas romances, and this is a secret because she's Jewish. So her family, like, she hasn't told them, no one actually knows this, and she also suffers from a chronic illness, which is key in the story, and that was a really nice element to see. But her publisher, they approach her wanting her to write a Hanukkah romance, and she all of a sudden has like no ideas for anything. She's like, I can't do this. So she ends up going to the Matzah Ball, which is like this really big event made by one of her childhood rivals, and she sees him, and obviously like there's kind of some sparks flying between the two of them, but she goes there to try and get inspiration for her story. I just felt like this was like such a cute, refreshing, and new sort of holiday romance. I really loved learning so much about Hanukkah and like the Jewish culture in general, and watching these two characters. It wasn't enemies to lovers that I did really enjoy, because that is kind of a trope that I do tend to struggle with a little bit, but in this case I could definitely see the chemistry between the two of them, and I loved it. I think maybe because it was a mix of like second chance romance and enemies to lovers, that's why I liked it, because they weren't like so much enemies. It really was more of that second chance romance, but either way, it worked for me. I also ended up reading Nick and Noel's Christmas Playlist by Cody Hall, and I really liked this one. I kind of, when I was marking it as read on Goodreads, I saw some like really negative reviews, but honestly, I had a lot of fun with this one, and maybe it's because I listened to the audiobook. Like, I had a lot of fun with it. It was very corny, but it was exactly what I wanted from this Christmas romance. And it also is a best friends to lovers, and that's like definitely one of my favorite tropes of all time, and I think this did it so well. Like, I wanted these two characters to be together. I could feel it. It was meant to be. Their chemistry was amazing. But this is about two characters who they like, obviously they've been best friends for a really long time, and they live in a very Christmassy town. So Nick has been working on his family's Christmas tree farm, and he has just been through a really bad breakup. So now it's kind of like finally the time when the two of them can be together. So the two of them end up kissing, and like they're surprised that it feels right and everything, and it's just, you know, we have a love story set against the backdrop of Christmas that goes from there. I just like, I love the fact that their two families were so tight-knit, because Noel she's orphaned, she's lost her family, and Nick's family has taken her in, so there was just already such a deep connection between the two of them that I was like, this needs to happen, and I was all about it. I just could not. But I loved the Christmassy elements to it. I felt like they added the perfect touch to this romance story, and I mean, maybe if this was not set at Christmas, I wouldn't have liked it as much, but the corniness just worked for Christmas for me, and I just felt like it was so cute. Like, I didn't know what to expect from this one. I kind of picked it up on a whim, but It was really good. And the final book that I read in December is The 12 Dates of Christmas by Jenny Bayliss. I had picked this book up last year and I thought it sounded adorable. It's about a girl who agrees to go with this dating service that sets her up on 12 dates leading up to Christmas, and they like are assuring that they will find the one. And it was so fun. Like, it was adorable. There were so many different twists and turns, and a lot of it was kind of over the top and ridiculous, but it worked. I loved the Christmassy theme of all the dates, so you had a lot of holiday things sprinkled in there, and it had an adorable romance overall. Like, it was so cute. But I didn't really explain that very well. It's like 12 dates leading up to Christmas, so it's 12 dates with 12 different men. It's just like, it's a lot of fun. You know, when you have a concept like that, it's kind of like 10 blind dates-ish, but this is the adult version, and I felt like it was adorable. I loved the English setting. I don't know why, but Christmas books always seem to be set in like small English towns, and this one was no exception, but it was so cute. I loved the characters, loved the friendships and everything. Like, it wasn't just about her and all these dates. There was so much more going to it, which is why I really enjoyed it. So those are all the books that I ended up reading for the end of 2021 that I haven't gotten the chance to talk about yet. So if you have read any of these books, please let me know your thoughts on them, and I will have a January recent reads coming out soon, because I'm actually going to film it now because I have read quite a few books already this month. So thank you guys so much for watching today's video. I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you in another one soon. Bye!